to the Randy Karraker Show on STL Sports Central. High Definition says we're slacking because we're getting started late. Yeah, it's my fault. I'm on remote today. Matthew Rocchio is in the studio. It's great to have you with us, and we got a lot of things to cover during the course of this show during the next hour and a half. Matthew, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Randy. How are you doing on this wonderful federal holiday?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm taking advantage of it, obviously. It's great to be here with you on this federal holiday, but we'll have a good time. And the Cardinals, after getting rained out last night. Oh, by the way, should we mention that STL Sports Central is presented by DraftKings, where the crown is yours? We should mention that. Cardinals with the doubleheader today. They'll take on the White Sox twice. I love the old straight doubleheader. I'm not a huge fan of the day-night doubleheader, Matthew, but I love the straight doubleheader that starts at 1:10 today.
Yeah, I'm a little off with this whole short break between things. I need the longer break. I know if I'm a fan, I like the immediacy of it. But as a media member, I'm decidedly for the longer break between the two games. It looks like we might have lost connection with Randy Karraker just there. He is, of course, live from the Matrix Midwest studios. Randy, do we still have you? We still have him on screen. He's moving, but I don't know if he's...
Yeah, I'm here. I got you, sir.
All right, good to hear, good to hear.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was an interesting build for the Cardinals today. I don't know if
Could you say that again? I'm sorry. I got you now.
I'm just commenting on the doubleheader. I don't like the build today. In fact, it's screwing with us here at STL Sports Central. We don't get to do our usual post-game shows presented by our friends over at Hot Shots. We got to change things around. We don't get to delineate it and break it down throughout the hours. So yeah, I want the old, spread them out, and I think the players like it too. Spread them out a little bit, give us a little breathing room. That would be a lot better.
Yeah, and today things worked out for the Cardinals on a couple of fronts. Number one, they have to play a doubleheader today, but they were playing all of those games in a row, and they're playing 16 games in 15 days. That is one thing. But I think on the positive side of things, the Cardinals were able to go back to their six-man rotation that they wanted simply because of the rainout. They get McGreevy in today, and otherwise they probably would not have seen him until next week. He was scheduled to pitch for Memphis today, and they probably would not have seen him. Today is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Probably would not have seen him until next Tuesday. Now they get a free roster spot. They don't have to send anybody down to have McGreevy pitch. He's the 27th man on the roster, and they'll probably get against the White Sox team pretty good production out of him. I would think for the course of this day, they'll get 6 innings out of him, and it's almost like getting a free starter for those innings that he gives you.
Sorry about that, Randy. I was just checking my mic connection. I was getting some people telling me I was sounding off mic. Want to make sure that we're sounding good here on STL Sports Central. A little bit different configuration of the Randy Karraker Show featuring Brooke Grimsley today. Not only do we not have Brooke Grimsley, but Randy Karraker is a little bit live. And in fact, Randy, I don't want to get caught up in this, but I am going to be distracted by the light display in the window behind you for the entire show. I'm going to try not to, but it's going to get me at times throughout the entire show because there's a little light display. It's off right now, but it's going to run here in just a second, and it keeps throwing me off.
Yeah, it's a TV thing. Yeah, and it does. I get it. And if it's causing you as a viewer, I can always move this. I'm very mobile. So if it's causing people to have seizures, remember that time that was it Vanna White that caused seizures for somebody on I think a woman had seizures because she watched Vanna White. But strobe lights clearly cause problems for some people. If it's you just have to use the chat line here, and if it does cause a problem for you, then you just say the word and I will move away from the strobe lights.
I like it. I think it keeps people's attentions on us. You know, if they look away from the screen, they're going to be brought right back, and I appreciate that. My connotation for that is very different because as a child, I watched a lot of cartoons, and cartoons back in the 90s would have to run a warning across the front of it because they had a bunch of instances with people having seizures because of the super bright lights and the fact that it was like strobe light effects on these cartoons. And I always remember being a kid and seeing those things. So yes, it can be problematic. For me, it's just a lot of fun.
As long as we're all having fun, that's what it's all about. Okay, so do you have the lineup yet? I was looking for the lineup just a few moments ago. That's one of the reasons that I hopped on late. Have you seen the Cardinal lineup yet for the 110 start in the first game?
No, the Cardinals have still not put out the lineup. The White Sox have theirs out, but the Cardinals still nothing right now. When we get the lineups, we will bring them to you live right here on the Randy Karraker Show. I'll keep refreshing that, Randy, but right now, nothing from the Cardinals.
I'll be interested to see what happens. You're going against a couple of right-handers, and my guess would be, Matthew, that we probably won't see Herrera behind the plate today. I would think you'll get Pajes in one game, Pozo in the other game. But the way things have gone since everybody is healthy, and we talked about this yesterday, how the Cardinals really only have two guys that you don't either have to or want to see all the time, right? Barrero and Pozo are the only guys. Everybody else you want to see. So I would imagine that Ollie will give us pretty distinctly different looking lineups today for the two games. I'm intrigued to see how much runway for today a guy like Gorman gets, because you have 11 guys, and Barrero will probably play. He'll probably play all 13 today. But for me, on a day-to-day basis, I count 11 players that you'd like to get at-bats for, or that you have to get at-bats for. And I would think that we'll see a lot of Burleson and a lot of Gorman today. I think we'll see both of those guys against right-handers in both of the games in some way, shape, form, or fashion.
As my grandma used to say, your lips to God's ears on that one. Oh, I guess in this case, the manager's ears, because yeah, that's all I want to see. We've been talking about it for the last couple of weeks. We're going to keep talking about it. This lineup construction, log jam, runway conversation we're having, it's not going to go away. We're going to dive into maybe a little bit later on into one of our conversations about that being reacted to by fans because of some things I said. So be it, but it's not going to go away because it's real. And we got a chat yesterday saying the logjam isn't real. In my opinion, it just gives more material the deeper you get, and the more success that you have from these players. It's kind of like a catch-22 thing. The more success all these hitters have, the trickier the Cardinals' decision-making is going to get. It's a good problem to have, but it is nonetheless something they do have to figure out.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And same thing with the pitching. Both Fetty and McGreevy are going today. And as I mentioned, they get a free look at McGreevy today. But at some point, Matthew, I think that they need to get a regular look at McGreevy like they're getting their look at Liberatore this year. And I don't know whose expense that will have to get into a scenario where McGreevy is pitching on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I'd love to see that. And do you think, because obviously
I am going to set up a different hotspot here, if you don't mind. So
right.
I will be with you momentarily. I'm just going to switch things out.
All right, Randy Karraker is going to jump off for just one moment.
It'll be very quick, and we'll have a much more enjoyable.
Randy jumping in and out, so he's going to reset and dive in with us here. And the thing that I was going to bring up about McGreevy, and I'm going to get Randy to weigh in on this, comes down to, this is a surprise thing. Obviously, you can't predict all these doubleheaders. We've hit the point where it's just getting ridiculous with how many doubleheaders there actually have been for the Cardinals this year. Derek Gould did a piece on the STL today about how they're hitting the point where there's going to have to be real discussions about how this is going to be handled if it continues the rest of the year. So this isn't a planned thing, getting to finally see Michael McGreevy. So I just wonder, does it matter how good of a game Michael McGreevy has today? Does Michael McGreevy having a really big game for the Cardinals tonight change their planning going forward with Michael McGreevy? If he mows down a bad roster, a bad lineup, especially considering it's a bad team, does this change anything? And that's my big thing. And I think that's my thing with Cardinals fans, is that none of the complaints you all have, and I'm not saying they're not legitimate, they are legitimate, but none of the complaints that all these Cardinals fans have is going to change just by seeing Michael McGreevy in spot starts when things get forced like this. They want to see Michael McGreevy called up in the rotation on a set basis. And so, and I just don't think him even having a big game tonight, I don't know if it's going to shift the Cardinals' decision-making, because in all things, they are still a fairly conservative ball club. And I don't blame them for those things. They slow roll pitchers, and I think that's probably smarter than the way that other teams do it, and the way that we see players just drop to the wayside so often when it comes to pitchers. The Real Birdman one, he says the logjam is real. This is Real Birdman coming in yesterday calling the logjam real. I don't know how, again, you don't see the logjam, especially, and let's just say it's not this season. It's not just a singular season logjam. Widen it to next year and to the year after that. There's undoubtedly a logjam in the middle infield, the infield overall, the DH spot, and who can successfully play the outfield. That's a real thing. And it looks like we got Randy Karraker back here live from the Matrix Midwest studios. Randy, we were talking about Michael McGreevy joining the team as the 27th man. My big thing that I was just going off is talking about how, this is not a set planned thing for the Cardinals. This doubleheader comes out of nowhere. So does Michael McGreevy having a really good game against a bad lineup, does it change anything going forward?
I don't think so. I think that because the Cardinals were in the midst of this stretch of so many games in so many days that he was going to be here either way. I don't think that he can make any more of an impression on the ball club than he's already made. The one thing that could happen today, and I think you really want Fetty to pitch well, because the way that McGreevy is going to get into the lineup is if the Cardinals can move a guy like Eric Fetty. And if teams say, okay, that's the guy I want, like the Cardinals said about him last year when he was with the White Sox, then the Cardinals might be able to move him. I don't know at this stage if we get to the deadline, he's not going to be a guy that other teams are going to be really interested in. As I've said before, I think the teams that have injuries right now in the middle part of the rotation, those are the ones that are going to be interested in Fetty. And I know that Mo said earlier in the year when the Arenado thing happened, he said, I'm not going to chase teams that have injuries. I wish he would look at the teams that have pitching injuries in the middle of their rotation, 3 through 5, call them up and say, hey, I want to get McGreevy up. I will move Fetty to you for a reasonable price. I want to see Michael McGreevy in the rotation. I want to see him. Here's the big thing, Matthew. Don't you want to know as much about him going into 26 as possible? Because you've got all of these hitters that you have looked at all year long, and then you're going to go into 2026, and you're going to lose Michaelis, you're going to lose Fetty, so it's Palante, Liberatore, and Gray. You have to replace 2 of those guys. One of those guys you would hope will be McGreevy, but I want to learn a little bit more about him before I plug him into the rotation. And I think this is an ideal time because there's no chance that Eric Fetty is a member of the Cardinals next year. So if there is no chance and you want to get McGreevy to the major leagues, why not do that? Why not move Eric Fetty and get McGreevy into the starting rotation ASAP? And I know the Cardinals have talked about, well, we don't want to give up the pitching depth that we have. Well, at some point you're going to. Are you going to go into next year and not know about McGreevy, not know about Quinn Matthews? At some point, because you're losing Matz, you're losing Fetty, you're losing Michaelis, you're going to have to learn about these guys. So why not have it be right now?
That's a fair point. I do want to say, because I was talking about the Cardinals being a little bit more conservative, you wanted to give Quinn Matthews $80 million before he threw a pitch in the major leagues. So I feel like your mindset might be a little bit more liberal than the Cardinals when it comes to how you handle young pitching. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I agree with you, Randy. I wish they ran like you did, but I think we're definitely looking at a situation where our expectations are just not going to line up with the reality of what the Cardinals are going to do.
No, and the reason that I would do it, and the reason that I think that it should be done is because we know how much starting pitching costs. The Dodgers go out and get Yamamoto, 25 years old, and he had never thrown a pitch in the major leagues. They give him $325 million. Look at all the money that they gave Sasaki and the guys that are hurt all the time, like Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow. The Dodgers have no problem giving guys a ton of money, and the Yankees are in the same situation. Rodon had been hurt for most of his career when they gave him the big contract. Max Fried had spent a lot of time on the shelf when they gave him the big contract. I think that once a player gets a couple of years into his career with a level of success and everybody in Major League Baseball knows about it, he's more apt to go down the line and get to free agency where the Cardinals can't afford him. The reason that I would go with a big contract for a guy like Quinn Matthews, and I'm not even talking about $100 million, but the reason that I go is because it's a pay me now or pay me later situation. If you want to have this guy around beyond his 6th year, then the only way to do that is to buy out arbitration years.
Is it just
and free agency years?
Is it just risk aversion that you think the Cardinals don't cross that bridge? Is it just pure risk aversion?
I think it is now, because look at all they've done in the past. And maybe it's because they've been burned. They got burned by Piscotty. They got burned by Carlos Martinez. They got burned, I think, to an extent by Colton Wong. The Carpenter contract was good, but Paul DeYoung, more times than not, when the Cardinals have signed their own guys to extensions, they haven't worked out. And maybe they just developed a level of distrust about their evaluation process, which it's not a bad thing that they developed that level of distrust about their evaluation process. But here you have Matthews, last night, his 3rd game back off the shelf, off of the arm injury, and he goes 5 one-hit shutout innings, strikes out 6 and walks 2. Whenever the guy has been healthy and pitched, he's pitched really well. I don't know what it's going to take for the Cardinals to be convinced, because he pitched really well at Stanford too. At some point, you have to be convinced, and hopefully they don't get convinced too late where it becomes prohibitive for them from a cost standpoint to keep the guy around.
I guess I'm still surprised that they are holding him back or handling him the way they are, because to your point, his success in college and the fact that he's 23 already. And I know, for that, all they care about is the cheap 5 years that he plays under, before he hits arbitration. They don't care whether or not those 5 years, I think, are 24 to 29 or 20, 23 to 28. They just want those 5 years of good production for cheap contract. That's the grand scheme of what you want from these players. So they don't think about that. I think about that because, to your point, what he is, you have all the college experience. Maybe the holding him back should be handled completely differently. And I'm a little disappointed we're not going to see it, but we're kind of spinning our wheels on, again, something that just isn't going to change, because we know why the Cardinals don't think that way. We know why we think that way, and throw up our hands and say, oh, well, we wish it could be the other way. And it is what it is.
Yeah. Bubs, we complain about getting screwed by bad free agent signings, but couldn't we remedy some of that by signing our own guys to extensions? Maybe I'm crazy. No, Bubs, you aren't crazy at all. And that's what I'm talking about. Because if you want to compete now, and things have changed dramatically in the last 5 or 6 years, with Jacob deGrom getting his $36 million a year, when Scherzer signed the deal along with Verlander for $43.5 million a year. The price of starting pitching has really gone quickly from $22 or $23 million a year to $40 million a year. And with the Dodgers being in existence, with the Yankees being in existence, the Red Sox, the Braves gave good money to Sale. The Red Sox signed Crochet to his contract. Those big contracts aren't going away. So if you have the opportunity to have cost control for 5 years, why not try to take advantage of that? And think about this, because if a guy like Quinn Matthews winds up being, let's say that he winds up being a 14-game winner in his rookie year and has a strikeout to walk ratio or strikeout to innings pitched ratio of 1-to-1, strikes out 120 in 120 innings. Then the next year, he winds up giving you more innings and gives you more wins. And then all of a sudden he's in arbitration and he's asking for a contract similar to what Max Fried got in his 3rd year. And so you're talking about $20 million. You're talking about $18 million as a 3rd-year player. And then you still have 4, 5, and 6. So why not sign him for $80 million now when you probably would have to pay that sum or more in arbitration when he gets 2 years, 4, 5, and 6? I agree. You're not crazy. I think that's one of the approaches that would be smart for a mid-market, mid-revenue team like the Cardinals to take. I just don't love the idea of gambling. And by the way, the other thing the Cardinals have done lately, Matthew, as you know, is they have taken players to arbitration. That makes players unhappy. They're much more likely to walk into free agency after 6 years if they have had to spend 3 years being pounded by the organization in arbitration.
And that's why another great text from Bubs here. Can we just pay Donovan already? There's another guy who you settled arbitration this past year for just under $3 million. Ain't no way you're settling for just under that if he finishes the season hitting 300 and leading his position in doubles and in other categories like that. That's another one that jumps out to me. And to your point, it would just, I can't imagine they'll fumble this one, but it would be the worst case scenario when it comes to the Donovan situation is I fire up Twitter sometime in January, and there's Derek Gould killing it with another piece that Brendan Donovan is unhappy after the arbitration that he just went through with the Cardinals. That would be an inexcusable mistake for them to make, and I hope it doesn't happen. Lock them up.
Okay, so who says no? I'm going to give you a number for Donovan and the Cardinals. $28 million over 4 years. Who says no?
So 7 a pop. I think,
and this is Donovan's third year, so it'd take a year of free agency away from him too. This is year 4, isn't it, for Donovan? So
yeah, this is a second. He's going into a second arbitration out of 3.
Yeah. So okay, so I'm well. Let's give you that number, 28 over 4, and you buy 2 years of free agency from him.
If I'm him,
I think the Cardinals do it.
If I'm him, I'm saying no, and I'm holding out to try to push that to 8.5 or 9 per year.
Okay,
I think I can push that to 8.5 or 9.
But he's also he's betting on himself, and there's nothing wrong with that. He's betting on himself becoming what Tommy Edman is, right? That's where Tommy Edman is in the salary realm. He might already be Tommy Edman. If I'm the Cardinals, I do it in a blink. If I'm him, what if they move it up to 30 over 4?
No, I'm with Samuel Howe on and these guys about using Edman as a good thing and going off that one. $9 million a year, 4 for 36. I think that's the offer the Cardinals open up with if they truly want to say we don't want to have a conversation. We know what you're worth. We know what you're worth. We know what you are. You're in your prime. These are all prime years. Let's get this done. I think 4 for 36 gets it done lickety split.
And by the way, I do think that the Cardinals and the Dodgers are different. The Dodgers are different than anybody else. What the Dodgers pay people, they don't care how much they pay people. So unless Donovan is planning to be a Dodger, which very well could be the case, he's probably not going to get that amount of money. No. It's also if he is a second baseman. And it'll take some time here. We all remember how Ozzie Albies signed for less than market value. Well, it was perceived as less than market value, but I think we're in the area here. If we're talking between 8 and 9, I think the Cardinals, once their revenues bounce back, they should be willing to do that because I think he brings more off the field than a lot of players. He's obviously very good on the field, but I think the other part of Brendan Donovan, he is kind of a face of the franchise type guy. And I would think that the Cardinals might put a little bit more value on that than other teams because he's done it for their team and hasn't done it for other teams. So, but to our main point here, the Cardinals need, because they've given these guys runway, they're doing this so that they can evaluate players. If they have already positively evaluated players, and we're closing in on 100 games for this season, if they have positively evaluated a guy like Donovan or a guy like Wynn, the price is only going to go up if they are what you expect them to be. So you might as well start trying to sign them right now.
And by the way, to your point, you don't have to look, maybe this is a bad comparing across sports, but you don't have to look into a lot of MLB sports. Just look down the street a little bit and see what locking up players that you're confident are real stars, locking them up early and what it does. Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas are 2 of the best contracts in the entire NHL.
They are.
Doug Armstrong took a little bit of a risk. We were involved, us personally, on the air in a lot of conversations about what those contracts were. And I felt like as long as these guys play to their potential, these are two of the best contracts in the NHL 3 or 4 years down the road. And that's exactly what's happened. And to the same thing with the Cardinals. Yes, there is a risk. And to your point, they've gotten bit by it before. They had to do one of the very few times of biting the bullets on a contract in the Alan Craig situation because they got ahead of it. But it puts you so far ahead of the 8-ball. And I think it's honestly, if you talk about, added value, I think it's always positive EV to lock up a player you truly believe is going to be a young star and take that risk than the back end where you might have to shed the contract. I think it's always better to try and take the risk at the front end.
And you know what's interesting? We might be hardened to players these days, and we think about how attached to money they are. I still think for a lot of players, and Donovan seems like one of those guys, there is an appreciation in playing for the organization that drafted you and brought you into pro ball. Not that you give a discount for it, but I do think that there's an appreciation on the part of players and that they like doing that. By the way, Samuel Howe, he says, I feel like Randy caved too quickly. We're supposed to haggle more. Here's why I didn't really cave. Originally I was thinking that he only had that I was buying 1 year of free agency. If I'm buying 2 years of free agency from Brendan Donovan, then I'm willing to pay more for it, because obviously once players pass that 6-year threshold and can get into free agency, it's worth more for them. So that's why I caved, Matthew.
Bill Down says, is Donovan playing left since Wetherholt will be your second baseman? By signing Donovan, you are blocking Wetherholt. We brought up them position locking Donovan, or wanting to position lock Donovan to second base this year. But I think that conversation is a season by season thing, because it's all about accentuating his defense. If you tell Brendan Donovan going into 2027, this is JJ Wetherholt's year to get 500 at bats, you're a left fielder now, then he gets the entire offseason to recondition himself and redial into a new position. I think the comments we're seeing from Marmol about him having to play second base, left base, second base, second base, second base, left field within a 6-day period, I think is what they're trying to avoid right now.
I think there's a better chance Wetherholt moving to permanently than there is of Donovan moving to the outfield permanently. I know the Cardinals drafted Wetherholt as an infielder, but I believe that they're going to ask him to pick up an outfielder's glove and try to develop a level of versatility. They really do like Brendan. Heck, they should like Brendan Donovan at second base. He's a Gold Glove. He was a Gold Glove utility guy a few years ago, but he's a Gold Glove quality player that they already know at the major league level can do what they want him to do. I don't think Wetherholt is going to take over for Wynn, and so I think they're reading the tea leaves here, and I think they're going to ask Wetherholt to pick up his outfield glove, because he does have that Tommy Edman skill set to go out there and play the outfield. I just, my personal opinion from what I've been able to glean, Matthew, I really do think the Cardinals have a better chance. Wetherholt has a better chance of playing the outfield than Brendan Donovan does.
All right, Wesley Ruffton informing us on the chat that the lineups are in. And by the way, I want to tell everybody, this is going to be the final part of the show that we do live on Facebook. After we go through the lineup, we're going to be shifting to our exclusive YouTube broadcast. So if you are watching on Facebook right now, I'm going to put into the Facebook chat the link for our YouTube. Join us right now, because after we list this Cardinals lineup, our reaction to the Cardinals lineup, we're going to take that off Facebook. You're only going to get our reaction to the lineup over on YouTube. So right now in the chat on Facebook, go over to the YouTube right now. We're going to be making this shift here in just a moment. Here is the Cardinals lineup for today. Randy Karraker going up against Sean Burke, the righty. Mason Wynn leading off playing shortstop. Ivan Herrera is behind the plate, catching Eric Fetty, batting second. Alec Burleson at DH, batting third. Wilson Contreras at first base, cleaning up. Nolan Gorman is in the lineup, batting fifth, playing second base. Nolan Arenado at third base, batting sixth. Lars Nootbaar in left field, batting seventh. Jordan Walker in right field, batting eighth. And Victor Scott the third rounds things out. Victor Scott the second, rounds thing out in center field, batting at ninth. So the big changes there. Ivan Herrera is behind the plate, batting in that 2-hole. Nolan Gorman is at second base. Brendan Donovan gets a day off.
All right, the White Sox clearly one of those teams. The White Sox don't run a lot. They don't get on base a lot. So if you don't let them on base, then Ivan Herrera doesn't have to throw anybody out.
that's a good way to that's a good way to look at it. You have and honestly, with everything we've been talking about, I'm happy just Herrera and Gorman are in the lineup at the same time. All right, cool. Crack the knuckles, sit back and watch that. That's going to be fun.
That'll be great. Hey, Matthew, if people are thinking about lunch, but they don't have their lunch planned yet, I advise them to check out the Fenton Bar and Grill, just 2 minutes away from the soccer park on Rudder Road in Fenton. And the folks over at the Fenton Bar and Grill are just so friendly. You'll get a chance to meet Chuck. He is the 2024 maitre d' of the year in the St. Louis area. You've got great people there. Megan behind the bar. Say hi to Jamie. Say hi to Candy. It's such a great group of people. And the reason that you go to the Fenton Bar and Grill is above and beyond the spectacular service. How about the best trashed wings that you will ever enjoy? The trashed wings at Fenton Bar and Grill are absolutely to die for. You smell them in the parking lot when you're walking in. They're absolutely tantalizing. You dip them in some of their signature golden sauce, or maybe you get a little bit of the fantastic homemade ranch at the Fenton Bar and Grill. You'll love their wings. But it's not just the wings. Have a great fresh salad. On these hot days in St. Louis, you want to have some of that crisp lettuce, those fresh tomatoes, and that nice, cool cucumber, and take advantage of their great Cobb salad, which has fantastic ham and well-seasoned turkey. Man, the food at the Fenton Bar and Grill is spectacular. Great people, great food. You're going to have kindred spirits in there. You're going to be watching sports and talking about sports. It's the Fenton Bar and Grill on Rudder Road in Fenton. You can learn more by going to FentonBarandGrill.com. Have a great time. And when you go to the Fenton Bar and Grill, tell them Randy sent you.
Randy, I don't know if you saw it, but Jeremy Rutherford doing a great little piece in The Athletic, pointing out what could be a perfect offseason for the Blues. He also said, don't worry, Friday, he's coming up with what the worst case scenario of the offseason would be. But I loved this view because he laid out a perfect offseason. And to his point, the first two things in the 5-point perfect offseason were a little bit unrealistic. It involved a player falling to them right in the perfect spot in the draft, and it involves adding Sam Bennett. I think we can agree we're probably not going to see both of those things, certainly not number two. But 3, 4, and 5 are extremely realistic moves the Blues could make for apparently a perfect Blues offseason. And the big one right out of the gate that JR laid out was number 3, which was re-signing Holloway and Broberg to long-term deals. He even pointed out in a fan survey that the majority wanted 4-year extensions for Holloway and Broberg. JR said he's so excited that he would be willing to see 8-year extensions for Holloway and Broberg. Maybe a little bit too big for the britches, but nonetheless, your thoughts on an early long-term extension after big seasons for Holloway and Broberg?
I think that is a brilliant move, and we have to keep a couple of things in mind. The way that the Blues do things, the contracts for Holloway and Broberg would kick in after this coming season. So you'd still have Holloway at just under 3, and you'd still have Broberg at about 4.5. And the Blues right now have $5.03 million left in cap space, plus the $6.5 million that they'll get as relief because of the Torrey Krug injury. So yeah, I would sign Broberg and Holloway first, and obviously there will be a cash expenditure there because of the fact that the Blues would have to give them signing bonuses. But yeah, I think that is exactly where the Blues start. Build some certainty for the future. And think about it from this perspective. You've got Kyrou, you've got Thomas, you've got Parayko under contract. If you have Broberg and Holloway under contract too, and Buchnevich, you've got a core here for the next 5 years that you can plan on having, and that'll be 2 defensemen. You still have a couple of years left of Binnington, but you'd have 2 defensemen, you'd have 3 or 4 forwards that you have under contract, and a lot of cost certainty for the near and the distant future.
And I have to imagine having that level of consistency, knowing what your core is for any team, that's going to be a huge thing going forward. I'm sure it helps with conversations during free agency with free agents of knowing what am I coming into. But also, let's tack on this extra thing here for the Blues. They're doing this in the middle of a regime change in the front office. And while it's not a drastic one because Army's still going to be there as Steen takes over and all that stuff, and it's a handoff and all these things, nonetheless, Alexander Steen being able to take over this new role, having the core of his team built out for him for multiple years, that's got to be one of the smoothest transitions of a front office we've seen in sports history, let alone St. Louis.
No doubt about it. And here's the cool thing from my perspective is, unlike the Cardinals, where we're still asking questions about a lot of these young players, I feel really confident in Broberg becoming a top pairing defenseman. I already know that Colton Parayko is that guy. I know that I can count on Kyrou for 35 to 40 goals a year. I kind of think that Thomas is going to be a point-a-game guy. Buchnevich is kind of flighty, you don't know, but Binnington is pretty solid. So rather than paying for question marks, to play for that solidity, that confidence is totally worth it for me. And then a couple of years from now, you'll have Schenner coming off the books. You'll have some more flexibility, and you'll hopefully in the near future you'll want to give Snuggerud an extension too. I think there's a lot to be said for getting those guys under contract and putting the puzzle together for the 26-27 campaign, doing that right now.
And I say split the difference. Let's just give 6-year deals to both Holloway and Broberg. Nice and neat and pretty. And mind you, I think these long-term deals are even more important in the NHL than they were 5 years ago, because 5 years ago you were making these deals and a lot of them were going to be over years where the cap wasn't moving. And so you were still, the percentage that you were getting of the value wasn't changing relative to the cap. But now you lock a guy in at 8.5. Well, by into an 8-year contract. Well, by year 5, now that the cap is finally going up, it again gets even bigger, and that the percentage of that you're taking up of the cap is smaller. These deals get even better, and so them having the future sight of Thomas and Kyrou, and now neither of them maybe had the breakout year that Holloway had going into the discussion. Nonetheless, I would love to see it, and because of those deals, it wouldn't shock me at all if we see that.
Yeah, me either, and I would love to see it. Is there anybody else that you feel like you need to sign? Any of the other young players that you feel like you need to sign long term? I'm feeling pretty good about where they are. Otherwise, from a roster standpoint, I don't know that there's anybody that is imperative. It's interesting that the two guys they got from Edmonton are there, but I don't know that there's anybody that is imperative that they give a big long term contract to this offseason.
Yeah, I'm not sure about a big long-term contract, but I will throw out that I was surprised the realistically perfect Blues offseason from Jeremy Rutherford didn't include not getting offer sheeted for Joel Hofer, because that is something that could definitely happen. He's the only actual restricted free agent of consequence for the Blues this year. Everyone was talking about a year ago if the Holloway and Broberg moves would lead to retaliation and retribution by GMs from around the league of going after the Blues RFAs with a harder push. Well, the Blues do have a fairly meaty RFA this year with Joel Hofer, so it's not a long-term deal because you do have Binnington and you can't put that much money in the goalie. But I do think one of the side deals that would be nice to see them get done is retain Joel Hofer so that they do have that backup that we know can carry things for a stretch if they need it.
I agree. And I would offer him a deal. I think you can offer him 4.5, and that way any offer beyond that would draw a first-round choice. And most of the good teams they don't have a ton of cap space. So I'm almost to the point, and I like Hofer a lot. I think he has a chance to be really good. But if a bad team gives him a contract that I can get a bad team's first round draft choice in the future, I think I'd be inclined to look at that.
Yeah, and like you said, poison pill it, make it so that if you do lose it, you're still getting out some ways. I think Army's prepared after what he pulled off last year. And so that's really the only other one I'm looking at. But that's not the only things that JR is looking at for this potentially perfect Blues offseason. Let's move to a conversation on the Blues blue line, as he says his next one is signing Fowler to a 3-year extension. He had a huge year for the Blues. This one would retain some more initial risk because he had such a big season, but he did change the Blues game a lot, was huge, and having him and Colton Parayko for a whole entire season, it would be nice to see and could potentially lead you to thinking, man, a 3-year extension this past offseason was something we should have gotten done.
Yeah, he's only 33 years old. So if your core for the next 3 years is, and a 3-year contract is fair, If your core is Parayko, Fowler, Broberg, and then you don't know what long term is going to happen with Letty or Justin Falk, I think I'm okay with that. And by the way, they gave Tucker a 2-year deal, so they know that he's going to be here next year. I think that there are enough players to fill in, taking nothing away. I think the ability of and consistency of Nick Letty is a really valuable thing, but he's also going to be 35 years old. And I think we can all agree that Justin Falk is a guy that I think is easily replaceable for the Blues. Yeah, if you could have those three, if you could have Fowler, Parayko, and Broberg as your main three, and say, okay, that's going to be my guys for the next 3 years, I'd roll the dice on that. Absolutely.
And then we're just going to roll on to this next one because you kind of brought up how it connects to everything, which is let's get rid of the that one and trade Nick Letty. That was the fifth and final of JR's points to a perfect Blues offseason. He says he doesn't want to pile on Nick Letty, but and there's a lot of fans who would want to trade Justin Falk before him, but Letty is down to just one more year left on his contract, and with a $4 million cap hit that may be more feasible to move than the remaining 2 years and 6.5 cap hit for Falk. To your point, though, you are, because you're adding Cam Fowler and you're maybe adding that money, you are going to have to make a move with some veterans who aren't living up to their price tags.
And I think this is one of the reasons that this is his perfect offseason. I don't know if you can find anybody to take Letty for a year. He's at $16 million, right? It was $4 million. It was a 4-year, $16 million deal. I wonder if there's a team out there that looks at that $4 million expenditure for 1 year as worth it for a guy like Letty. I think he's a nice, stable guy. I don't know that for anybody at this stage of his career, if he's a $4 million guy. And I know that's kind of a bargain these days in the NHL. If they could find somebody, great. I agree with JR. But if I'm a general manager, there's a lot of places I'm going to look. Letty would be down the list of choices for me as a lefty defenseman to try to help my team get better. The question you have to say is this expenditure of $4 million going to make me a Stanley Cup contender? I don't think that expenditure of $4 million does. And I think other teams, let's look at last year with the Blues, giving Broberg $4.5 million over and basically $9 million over 2. I would much rather find somebody that I could give up a number 1 pick for and get a Broberg type defenseman. I don't even know if anybody's out there, but I would much rather do that. Wouldn't you than sign a guy or trade for a guy like Letty? I don't think you even have to give up any assets if you get Nick Letty from the Blues. I just don't think that there are teams out there that are, maybe you can find somebody. I don't think there are teams out there that are willing to take on that guy. He's just not a difference maker at $4 million.
That's the issue, is he a difference maker and what team is going to come get him? That's the big thing. And to JR's point, and maybe he finally does the buyout. He's got all this cap room now. I guess maybe it's just a 1-year deal, so it doesn't really matter. Either way, I think this is great from JR. Either way, the Blues need to clear out a defenseman and add more toughness to a blue line that's been severely lacking it for years. Tyler Tucker needs to be a regular in the top 6, not sitting at the expense of a vanilla veteran. That's pretty much all you need to read. JR always cuts to the quick very well. And again, that's all from his piece on The Athletic today, talking about a potentially perfect Blues offseason, 5 steps. And he's going to come out with Friday on the 5 steps to a worst case offseason. And maybe you'll see the Joel Hofer, RFA stuff in there on that one. Okay, so we've got Tucker. Let's establish him as a top 6 guy. Is Ryan Suter back for the Blues for you next year? Maybe as the kind of role he had this year, where like if he ends up playing 82 games because somebody gets hurt and things like that, I'm fine with it. But I don't want to go in planning with him to be a top 6. Okay, so like, hey, if he can be a bench, what, $2 million? Is that what he cost? What was he? Yeah, year? Probably maybe. So I think it was like, yeah. I mean, he was $1 million this year. So I mean, yeah, he's a great depth player. Roll with him next year as your 7th guy with Tyler Tucker taking the jump. Okay, I want to figure things out. So let's assume that we can move from
move on from Letty, okay? And then
right.
you don't re-sign Ryan Suter. You've got
Mhm.
Tucker in there slotted in as a number 6. Your top pairing clearly is Parayko and Broberg. Your second pairing, let's just say your third pairing is Falk and Tucker. So what are you doing for your second pairing then?
Sorry,
Matt Kessel has another opportunity here. I know I'm leaving somebody out too, but I just wonder if it might behoove them to bring
Broberg.
a guy like Suter back.
Yeah, so Parayko Fowler, Falk Broberg, and
Okay,
then,
Falk Broberg. Yeah.
and then you
Okay.
got, and then Tucker on the bottom line with, yeah, you can fill in whoever.
Okay.
Cam Fowler,
right.
yeah. I mean, not Cam
Yeah.
Fowler, but
But
yeah,
so-
you're right. You need you need to maybe solidify the 6th person. Is it Ryan Suter? Do you go get a $2 million veteran to pair with Tyler Tucker? Maybe somebody who can move the puck a little bit more, or you just go full grit on that third pairing. To your point, you move Letty. You'd like to make an improvement, and you have the money. More importantly, once you get everybody on Krug on long-term IR, you add $6 million to the $5 million you have. We're looking at over $11 million in cap space. There's plenty of room there to get the second line center that everyone's talking about, the Mikhail Granlund, and then add 2 depth players like a winger, and then that third pairing defenseman.
I'm good with that. By the way, Bubs asks, what if Chicago signs an offer sheet for Hofer? They got Spencer Knight back from Florida in that deal where they sent Seth Jones to the Panthers. Spencer Knight played really well for Chicago, former number 1 pick of the Panthers. I don't think that they would spend the money for Joel Hofer to be their backup, because they look at Spencer Knight as their future number 1. I think he might even be younger than Joel Hofer. So I would be really surprised if Chicago would be the team that would go in.
We lost Randy Karraker. Hard drop there. His internet completely just kicked him off, and that is a huge bummer, ladies and gentlemen, but that's okay, because this gives us time to tell you about our friends over at DraftKings. The crown is yours. St. Louis sports fans, we are deep into the season, and if you're like me, you've locked into every pitch, pass, and play, and that's why we've teamed up with DraftKings right here on STL Sports Central to bring you Pick 6, the all-new way to play daily fantasy sports. Right now, all new customers who play just $5 will get $50 in bonus picks. That's 10 extra picks to keep the action going all week long. It's easy to start, fun to follow, and gives you a whole new way to stay connected to the game. In fact, talking about how easy it is to follow, easy is to start, easy it is and fun to play, I'm going to jump onto my DraftKings Pick 6 app right now. I've got plenty of Cardinals picks to make because we have that doubleheader going today. So we're going to go over to Major League Baseball, select the Cardinals games, and let's go through these Cardinals and White Sox matchup and pick out some players who are going to have big games. We're going to go Eric Fetty, more than 4.5 strikeouts thrown. We're going to go less on strikeout throws by Sean Burke, because I think the righty's going to get beat up by the Cardinals lineup today. And we are talking about Nolan Gorman. So let's go big X on our bet here with Nolan Gorman. Get 2.1x bonus when we add him more than 0.5 home runs. So we're going to go more than 4.5 strikeouts thrown by Eric Fetty, less than 3.5 strikeouts thrown by Sean Burke, and we're going to go with Nolan Gorman to hit a home run today. I'm getting 11.5x on my original wager right there on DraftKings Pick 6, where, again, the crown is yours. Just, again, promo code STL Sports. Play $5, you'll get $50 in bonus cash. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app today and use code STL Sports when you sign up, only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Randy, I know you were in the middle of a very salient Blues point. When you dropped off, though, we told everyone about our friends at DraftKings. So if you want to, go ahead and wrap up that Blues point if you want to.
Yeah, I was just saying that if I'm in their situation, I think they are in a win now, but I think the linchpin for everything that JR writes about is being able to trade Nick Leddy. And I do think that they have a need for maybe better depth. They had pretty good depth last year, but I think they need better depth on the blue line. And I don't know who that, I really haven't looked closely at who the free agents might be, or if they could move somebody. I think that they can get better than they were last year defensively. And I think Broberg being around all year and being healthy all year will be a benefit for the Blues. But if he goes down again, you're not going to be able to trade for another Cam Fowler. So I would like to start the season with just a better group. And I think Tyler Tucker being a starter, being a top 6 guy at the start of the season, I think that works to the Blues' benefit as well.
So the big name, and JR does throw this out there, Aaron Ekblad is going to be hitting the free agency wire this season from the Panthers, and he made about $7.5 million last year. You know, he just kind of threw his name out there. I don't know if they're going to swim in those kind of waters. I've always thought, you know, Ivan Provorov, you know, been in the NHL for like 10 years because he got here when he was like 18. He's a left shot defenseman. That would kind of fit in the breakdown of things. Gavrikov from the Kings, also a left shot defenseman. That would cost him about $6-7 million. So like, are they going to take this LTIR money from Krug and make a big move? I think if we do see a big money move, it'll be for the center position to solidify those things up and down all 4 lines. I don't think it'll be for the defenseman. I think we got to scroll down in the list to the $3 or $4 million guys if we're talking about a free agent defenseman.
I agree with you 1,000% there. And here's why. I think that Blues are okay with Parayko and Fowler. I think they're okay with their third defenseman being Philip Broberg. I don't think you want to bring in, I don't want to bring in, there's politics in dressing rooms. I don't want to bring in a guy to be my highest paid defenseman. And Ekblad would, if the Blues would sign him. And he's a really good defenseman. I mean, he's really good. But in 3 years, is he going to be better than Philip Broberg? If you sign him, because you'll have to sign him for 7 years, is he going to be better than Philip Broberg in 3 years? I don't think he is. And so while I like Ekblad, I think the Blues they should be more in the mode of building with quality depth. I don't think they need the top of the line guys. I don't think they need number 1 pairing defensemen. I don't think they need top line forwards. I think what they're looking for is depth in the top 6 and maybe depth in your second or third pairings. Now, everything changes if you could move a guy like Falk, but that's prohibitive too. And the other part of it is, I would think that, and this is the way it works, you know Matthew as well as I do, Ekblad's just won 2 straight Stanley Cups. Just that, the fact that he has played for Stanley Cup champions is going to increase the amount of money he makes exponentially. And
100%.
People are going to be willing to pay him more than what he is worth as a player. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And there's a lot of good free agents. They can, I mean, there's some names here that even if you're just a casual NHL fan, you'll have heard for some of these veteran defensemen that should be available for $4-5 million. Ryan Lindgren, you know him well if you've been watching Blues games because he's been trolling the Avalanche for the last couple of years. Alec Martinez, he's an older player. You got some older players like Tanev, not Tanev, sorry. David Savard is who I meant. So there are some older players around that $3 or $4 million who kind of fit maybe that souped up Ryan Suter version that we were just talking about, going with Tucker on the third pairing. Bottom line is, Blues are in a great situation. The fact that we're here, considering where the conversations about the Blues were in December, absolutely insane.
Yeah, and remember Army telling us he expected to make the playoffs, and then they make the change, and that's another point to be made here. But to be able to expect the team to be enhanced after nearly knocking off the President's Trophy winners in the first, it is insane to think about where we are. But I think we also are looking at a franchise that is different than it was at the beginning of last year, because I think Jim Montgomery is a guy that makes players better, Matthew. I think that he makes individual players better. So you might be able to go out and get a player for less money and have him be a really good player for you simply because you have such a great teacher as your head coach, and he's got really good teachers as his staff. He's got a really good group, And so the Blues might get some bargains here that we don't expect because they can coach them up.
Yeah, absolutely. Blues are in a good place right now, in a good future, cap money, spaces to fill. And the biggest thing maybe is young players continue to come up. You know, JR mentioned it in his article, Theo Lindstein, they got plenty of defensemen, obviously Dalibor Dvorsky. How do you find spots for all these young wingers? Man, things are great for the Blues right now. Love it.
They really are, and I'm looking forward to it. And I know the cost of doing business is going to go up as the cap goes up. How do you pay for that, especially with TV money going down? Well, there's only one way to generate more revenue, and that's through increasing ticket prices. And the Blues are understanding of that. I think Tom Stillman and the ownership group get that, hey, if we're going to ask these people to pay more for our product, then we have to give them the best product we possibly can. So I really do think there will be moves made during this offseason that'll excite us simply because the Blues know that we're going to have to pay more for the product than we did last year.
Yeah, and to your point, the amount they're going to have to bring in is going to start going up again because this is a team that's going to keep spending towards the cap, which means they're going to have to start upping the revenue because the cap's finally going up again after being solidified and stagnant since COVID. And so, yeah, new monies are going to have to come in. But if anything tells me that if I should believe in one franchise in this town that's going to be able to get things done, it's the one, playing their games at Enterprise Center.
Yeah.
It's just they're a solid organization. The ownership gets it. The front side of things, the sports facing side of things, obviously know what they're doing. The fact that they were able to pivot the way they were and reset things so fast, it's extremely impressive.
It really is, no doubt. And credit to Doug Armstrong and the ownership group. Interesting question from Bill Downton. So do hockey coaches do more than baseball coaches? Well, they're all individually different. But I would say in the big picture, yes, hockey coaches do more than baseball coaches. And the baseball manager's job is different than it was when Joe Torre was here. Joe Torre would show up and manage a game. There's a lot more teaching that goes on at the major league level now than there was 20 or 30 years ago. But the hockey coach has always been that guy. The hockey head coach is interacting with and teaching every single player unless it's a goalie and the guy never played goalie, because usually coaches will say, yeah, that's goalie stuff. I don't know about that. But yes, Jim Montgomery is a great teacher and understands every single position. And so, yeah, he does coach every single position as opposed to a player coming out early. Like if Jordan Walker is coming out early to work in the outfield, Matthew, generally he's going to be working with John Jay or Descalso will go out there or some of the other coaches. And Ollie is taking care of a lot of the media jobs that he has to do that are incumbent upon being a baseball manager. And it's that way with every manager. So a lot of the teaching that takes place, a lot of the development that takes place in baseball, the big guy, the manager, isn't even there. Whereas for every single minute of pretty much every single hockey practice, the head coach is there.
Yeah, and it's just the amount that you can have an effect on the game too. I mean, the coaches, NHL coaches, you're right there in the ear of the player. Then they go out there and they can affect the game for a minute, and you can change little coaching points, and you can see how the game's developing, and you can shift your lines around, and you can make sure that you're double shifting against certain offensive players to try to shut them down. There's a lot more hands-on ability to coach the X's and O's during a game for a hockey coach than there is a baseball coach. Yeah. And I just think that changes how we look at coaches. I think Americans' brains when it comes to coaching will always be broken by the fact that football is our number one sport. And we have a very strong connection to that. Football coaches have their hands on every little piece of a game. And we lose it a little bit when we don't think that a basketball coach or a baseball coach or a soccer coach can do those things.
And I think we've evolved to the point, at least in the NFL, where the head coach should be called a manager because the coaches don't coach an awful lot anymore because of, again, the aforementioned media responsibilities that they have. But their job is more of a CEO. What they do is hire their staff to, and the head coach gives the idea for the structure, the culture, the philosophy. But then the good coaches have their staff do their job. So, okay, here is my offensive coordinator. Here's our philosophy. Here's what I want you to implement from a philosophical standpoint as you put together a game plan. And the position coaches are doing the technical teaching of the players. Same thing defensively. Okay, you hire a defensive coordinator, and it's his job to implement your defensive strategy. And then your defensive line coach teaches your defensive linemen how to play. Linebackers coach with the linebackers, DBs with the DB coaches. And so it's different now than it used to be. Now, Belichick apparently was really intimately involved with coaching every single player. But I think with a lot of coaches now in the NFL, and Vermeil was this way with the Rams, they're more of a CEO than they are a coach. And so that's why I think that it'd be smart for football to change that terminology from head coach to manager.
I think it's funny too, because like I'm thinking of how a TV show where they put this question, because when Ted Lasso, the show, was trying to connect, I think, to the more casual soccer viewers who were watching it, they had his son ask him why he doesn't look like he's doing any coaching during the game, and then he drew the parallel how he doesn't get to coach during the game like he did when he was a football coach with soccer over in England. And I think it's funny that they used a child to put that point across, because that I think really drives home how just insane and like simplistic our brains as our American sports fans. We're like, this don't look like American football, me confused, which is kind of, I think, how things work nowadays.
No, it's not. And by the way, isn't it interesting that Chip Kelly, who's now an assistant with the Raiders, but he left the head coaching job at UCLA to go to Ohio State to be an assistant coach so that he could coach again? Isn't that amazing how, especially in college where there's so much outside stuff going on, that coaches, and he's not the only one, the defensive coordinator, Hafley, that left Boston College to go be the DC with the Packers. There's a lot of college coaches that feel like they don't get to coach anymore, and that's why they're leaving those head coaching jobs and winding up as assistants. I think even Dion got a head coach from another college to become his defensive coordinator. It's got to be really weird, doesn't it, in football right now, in college football, to not be able to coach your players?
Yeah, and I've seen a couple of the post-practice interviews with Chip Kelly for the Raiders, where they're talking to him about the stance of Ashton Genty, and I'm glad the cameras are above the waist, because Chip Kelly looks like rocked up talking about like a running back's like positioning, and like no, it matters so much more with your hands on your legs. If you watch any sports player, they're ready to go, they're enacted, they're not just standing there. The way that he got like jacked up to talk about just Ashton Genty's stance as a running back 100% confirms your point. These coaches want to coach, they don't get to do it as often when they are the head coach, and they're also weirdos. That's the other thing that confirms.
Yeah, but it is amazing just to think about that specifically, how, like, when I've taken golf lessons, they always say, get in an athletic posture, and basketball defense, get in an athletic posture and be that. Running backs, the same thing. Hockey, you have to be athletic and have your knees bent. And he makes a great point, Chip Kelly does. There really isn't much that you do athletically with your, at least at the start of an action, where your knees aren't bent. Look at tennis, right? What sport is there where you don't get into an athletic position with your knees bent? I can't think of one.
That's a really good point. And actually, I was going to say, I've always been chasing the high of the coaching I got when I first did a skateboarding lesson in Denver, where the guy looked at us and goes, what's a skateboarder, or not skateboarding, sorry, snowboarding. What's a snowboarder with 2 brain cells called? Gifted. And his point was that to be a good snowboarder, you just needed to kind of like slack down. But the one part, other than just kind of like slacking and not being tense, the only other point he gave is make sure there's a little bend in your knees while you're doing the slack. So to your point, even when the coaching is a stereotype for an entire sport, with snowboarders being dumb, even that point, bend your knees. So maybe I get Chip Kelly's point. Fine. He's trying to change players. Of course, that's all Chip Kelly does as soon as he gets to the NFL. But to his point, he's right this time. Fine. He was also, by the way, Chip Kelly was right when he was telling Eagles players to actually sleep, but they really hated him for that.
But you know what? He was telling them to sleep for 10 hours a night. I couldn't sleep. There's no chance of me being able to sleep for 10 hours a night. I have trouble sleeping for 5 hours a night. There's no way I could sleep for 10 hours a night.
Well, you're not 28.
But even when I was 28, I don't think I was getting 10 hours of sleep.
That's fair. Something happened when I turned like 31, but I could have done it at 28. I think I cannot do it now.
Yeah, once you have kids, you don't sleep anymore. It just doesn't happen. By the way, Blind Squirrel Sports says, allegedly, I learned something today. Thanks, guys. Tell us what you learned. Aside from the fact that I just I fell out of the show here for a while. I'd like to know what you learned, because that's what our goal is to teach you something every single day.
You know what? We should start doing that at the end of a segment, is having people comment what they learned from today's show, and we're going to keep the list, because inevitably we're going to teach these people some very, very odd things. And by the way, Randy, you were talking about kind of getting the most from families. Well, I believe there's someone on the West Coast who has gotten the most from her family, and that is, of course, Jeannie Buss and the Lakers. Big money as they are selling off, I guess, the majority stake to the Dodgers ownership group.
Yeah, Mark Walter of Guggenheim Partners, and obviously his partnership group, spending $10 billion on the Lakers. And Matthew, think about this. The previous high price for a sports franchise was the Celtics earlier this year for $6.1 billion. So we've skipped over basically the 6 billions, the 7 billions, the 8 billions, and the 9 billions. And we've gone from 6 billion to $10 billion for a franchise. And I think one of the things about Mark Walter, he's a very sharp guy, and he's buying more than franchise. He's buying brands, and he's got a monster brand in the Dodgers. And the other most popular, there are two popular franchises out in LA, the Dodgers and the Lakers. And now he's got not only those two franchises, but those two incredibly popular brands. And I have to look at, or think that he's looking at the way he's been able to globally monetize the Dodgers. And apparently the Dodgers made as much last year from Japanese investment, $700 million, $100 million deal. So I wonder if he's thinking that he can globalize the value of the Lakers like he has with the Dodgers and make that $10 billion back.
And I'm sure being tapped into the Asian markets already is probably a big part of that. Obviously, the NBA's connection to China, both for pros and cons and for good and bad reasons, has been a big topic over the last decade. Just a couple little quick facts about this story, because you're seeing the $10 billion number out there, a lot of things, but there's just to dive in a little bit to the actualities of some of this. So Walter and the Guggenheim Group, and it was framed in the New York Times story as him and businessman Todd Boehly, who is not part of the Guggenheim Group, but is part of the ownership of Chelsea, which is also the Guggenheim Group. So I'm sure it's all connected. But anyway, Walter and Todd Boehly bought 27% of the Lakers back in 2021, and back then the team was valued at $5 billion. And so they are acquiring by what I got from the article. The Buss family has 60% and will retain 12%. So I assume that means we're combining the 48% with the 27% to take us up to, I guess, 75% or 65%. Or said no, 75%. So they're going to have about 75% of the ownership. The Buss family will still be a part of it. Jeannie Buss will still be the governor. I do want to point out that when Mark Cuban sold the Mavericks, he was also still going to be the governor, and then they traded away his best player without even calling him. So just something I just wanted to throw out there when I saw that. This puts the Lakers' valuation at $10 billion. So this is probably like a $6 or $7 billion deal, but it values the Lakers at $10 billion. And apparently, according to the New York Times article, the potential ceiling is that this could end with the Lakers being valued at $12 billion. And to your point, the Celtics were just sold for $6.1 billion in March. And this is insane. The Lakers could be worth $12 billion. The NBA's yearly revenue is $23 billion. So I just think that is insane to me that one team could be that much, could be worth half as much essentially as an entire year of the league. That's nuts to me.
Yeah, the Lakers 23 billion. Is that what it said?
No, 12 billion.
12 billion. Okay, and the league is 23. Okay. That's
the league,
amazing.
yeah, the league takes home $23 billion.
Yeah. That's remarkable. I think one of the other interesting parts of this, has there ever been an iconic member of an organization who's been in and out of the organization more than Magic Johnson? I'm assuming he's back now, right? But he was there as a player. He was gone. They bring him back as a well. First of all, he left with HIV, came back and played again, left again, came back as coach, left again, came back as quasi general manager, left again, and then I think he came back as like the president of basketball operations, left again, and now he's coming back. It's unbelievable how much he leaves and comes back to that organization.
I can't believe you started that timeline where you
What? did. What?
So you choosing to start the timeline where you did is accurate, and I mean, I shouldn't be surprised, but nonetheless.
He left me?
Well, yeah. I mean,
it was when he had HIV. He retired.
Yeah. Okay. You're not wrong. Lex Luthor's calling Magic a front runner. Yes. That was one thing when I saw it, because Magic immediately tweeted and was like, Lakers, you're getting a great owner. You're getting Mark Walter. You know, I love him. He does something so incredible with the Dodgers. This is going to be great. He's going to make this organization better. And I was like, but yeah, you're part of it now again, Larry. Come on now. So yeah, it's Magic. So it's just, I don't know. I said Larry. Magic. It's absolutely ridiculous. I love everything about it. Yeah, exactly. It's in my head. It's all wrapped up as one. But bottom line, this is insane also, to the point that not only are they going for this big of a mark, the two biggest franchises in the league both get sold within a 3-month period. That's kind of insane for the NBA.
Yeah, it really is. And obviously, all the other owners are happy about it because of the fact that the value of their franchises is going up. But I wonder why. I wonder, because you've got the new TV contract, right? They're going to be incredibly valuable properties because of the 11-year, multi-billion-dollar TV contract that the league has just started. And not the Lakers as much, but the fact that or not the Celtics as much, but the Lakers have been family owned for such a long time. It doesn't seem like a logical time for the Buss family to be getting out. I guess they must have said, okay, how many opportunities are we going to get to sell?
Yeah, and I also wonder if there's something
I wonder if they're.
I wonder. Sorry, Randy, you were cutting out there. I didn't mean to interrupt you. To your point, though, when Walter bought in 2021, it was a $5 billion valuation. It's doubled in 4 years. That is probably all you need to know as to why the Busses are pulling the trigger, is because I'm not going to say the valuation isn't real, but when you see that kind of jump in value, and then somebody comes along and it says, we're going to realize that value by giving you the, whatever the 6 or 7 billion in actual cash to get your percentage is going to cost. I think you say, listen, this is the best chance to tap out. We don't need to get to a point where we're giving this to a third generation when we have to think about inheritance taxes and things like that. Let's just go out right now when we know somebody who is in LA, who's spending money in LA, who has all the money that he needs. He's right here. It just, everything kind of coalesces to a perfect time to make the move for them, I think.
And the Guggenheim people are sitting on $345 billion. They're almost like the like the private investment fund in Saudi Arabia. The amount of money that Walter and his people have is absolutely outrageous, and so they can do it. $10 billion is not a big deal for them. Obviously, it's a lot of money, but you still have $335 billion left over. So I'm sure that's part of it as well. By the way, Matthew, I want to bring something up here, and I think you'll like this. Because you definitely don't remember it, but I do, because I was in high school. So the Oklahoma City Thunder can win the NBA championship tonight if they beat the Pacers. When I was in high school in 1979, graduated in 80, the Seattle Supersonics, who were the franchise before they moved to Oklahoma City and became the Thunder, Seattle Supersonics beat the Washington Bullets for the NBA championship, the 1979 NBA championship. And I remember this distinctly. The NBA Finals were tape delayed to be on the air on TV at 10:30 St. Louis time after the news on CBS. Brent Musburger did the play-by-play, and they had no qualms at all about not showing the games live. And you look at how big the NBA is now, that a franchise just got sold for $10 billion. And it struck me because it was the Sonics, who are now the Thunder, that were tape delayed as they beat the Bullets for the NBA title. Isn't that amazing that we had a major pro sport here in America where they were actually taping the games and then showing them later?
It's absolutely unreal. But it proves it's why you can see the fact that Jerry Buss was able to buy the Lakers, which included the Kings and the Forum, for $68 million. And and 50 years later, his daughter is going to cash a check for at least 100 times that amount at $6.8 billion. That would be 100 times what her dad paid for the team. And again, $10 billion valuation. She's selling a good chunk of 60%. So she's getting at least 4 or 5, maybe $6 billion. So like we're talking about 80 to 90, 100 times Xing an investment. First of all, that's unbelievable. But you do that, and then you also got to be a Buss in the Forum Club for 20 years during the greatest years of LA basketball. I mean, maybe one of the greatest singular investments ever made in American or human history by Dr. Buss.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. Yeah, to be able to do that during the 80s, I'll bet Jeannie had a few fun times, and Jim and Jerry and the whole gang.
I'd say so.
By the way, Matthew, do you know the answer to this? Lex Luthor points out that the Oklahoma City Thunder don't acknowledge the Sonics' history. They don't hang any banners in their arena. Like the Houston Oilers, did they not retire that Sonics name and save it for Seattle if they ever get a team back? That can be the only reason that I would think that they would do that.
It's a really weird thing, but according to official NBA history, it is one franchise. But the NBA acknowledges that if the Seattle Supersonics ever return, they will officially return all Sonics history back to that connection of the new Sonics team. And at the same time, the Oklahoma City Thunder do not claim that they have a championship in 1979. And while I think they might, I think Lex Luthor is correct. They don't hang any of the retired numbers. They might hang retired numbers as like respect for those players, but they do, but they do not actively try to like claim the Seattle history because they know that they want to be a separate franchise. They don't want to be connected to the fact that they stole the Supersonics. And I do believe that part of that connection is that the Oklahoma City Thunder say we didn't win that championship, but because of the NBA's thing, they officially say it's one franchise. But I believe there is discussions already been had in the NBA that as soon as the Seattle Supersonics come back, then everything will be reset and it'll all just be one continual Sonics history, and then you'll have Thunder history.
And that makes sense because Gary Payton's number 20 and Sean Kemp's number 40, those should be up in the rafters in Seattle if they have a team, and especially if they have a team called the Sonics. But either way, those are numbers that the retirement of those numbers, the fact that they are being hung in the rafters, the reason for that is because of what they did in Seattle, right?
They do not hang the Seattle Supersonics retired numbers in their arena. They own the rights to the Sonics history and retired jerseys, but they do not display them or acknowledge them as their own.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm good with that, especially and it's not an if, it's a when Seattle gets a team back and they will be called the Supersonics. So I think that's cool. But congratulations if the Thunder do win tonight. Congratulations to them.
When Clay Bennett moved them, he acquired the Sonics history, including the retired jerseys, but he and Seattle came to an understanding that it would be returned to Seattle upon them regaining the team. All right, that's what I thought.
So that's
I was 90% sure
when Modell moved the Browns, he did basically the same thing. Although I don't think the Ravens ever even put like the old Browns players in their record book. And then when the new Browns came about 3 years later, they still have Jim Brown and Leroy Kelly and Brian Sipe and Bernie Kosar, all those guys that played for the old Cleveland Browns. That's in the Cleveland Browns record book, even though the franchise they played for is now the Baltimore Ravens.
Yes, exactly. So, but you mentioned it tonight. I hope, even though it is officially right now, I do hope that all of the broadcasting nomenclature tonight, if they do win, is congratulations to the Oklahoma City Thunder bringing the first championship in franchise history. I hope they play it like it should be played, which is this is a new franchise that, yes, drafted one of their all-time best players in a different jersey, but fine. The Thunder are the Thunder. Let's just keep rolling with it there.
Yeah, I think it'll be an interesting game. My guess is that there's no way that Halliburton can be 100%. And heck, OKC's minus 238 to win tonight. I can't imagine that they wouldn't.
Yeah, I just think they're going to wrap this one up. They're too good. And if you can get Jalen Williams, not with the Y, the Jalen Williams. If you can get J-Dub going, just like he was in Game 5, and Shai, it's a wrap. But at the same time, we just know that the Pacers, if they can get all their guys going, if they can get Miles Turner to hit some threes, block some shots, if they can get Halliburton, just even as a passer, he's able to threaten and open up the lanes, they'll able to keep this one close. But it just, as they have the entire season, I think the Thunder just have a little bit too much, and they're going to win this one out.
I agree with you 100%, and hopefully that's something that we are talking about tomorrow. Sorry about the fits and starts here, but we had a later show. We were actually on Channel 4 for the TV show today, so I didn't have time to drive over to our regular studio, but tomorrow Bernie will join us. I'll be in the regular studio with you, and we'll have a fun time tomorrow. But Matthew, thanks for making this work as well as it did. I really appreciate it.
Of course, and I want to tell everybody, things are a little bit different because of the doubleheader, because there's almost no time between the games. We will not be doing a post-game show after Game 1 of the doubleheader right here on STL Sports Central, presented by Hot Shots. We will be doing a combined dual post-game show after Game 2 right here on STL Sports Central, again presented by our friends at Hot Shots. So make sure you check out the Cards Central post-game coming up after Game 2 of the Cardinals and the White Sox tonight. Hopefully we're talking about a Cardinals potentially a sweep of the day and the series. We'll see. Stay tuned to STL Sports Central when we go live later tonight. All right, and that's going to wrap it up. Randy Karraker, like you said, tomorrow we'll be on the show. We'll be back. We'll have what?
Did you want me to say goodbye?
I still wanted you to say goodbye, Randy. Come on. I can't end the show without you waving goodbye to me. Come on now. Jesus.
Yeah, well, thanks to all of you who joined us on the chat today. We appreciate that. Tell your friends about it. Hope that you can join us on the Randy Karraker Show tomorrow about 10:02 until 11:30 right here on STL Sports Central. So long, everybody.